Have you ever looked at your bank account a few days before payday and experienced just this mild sense of vertigo?
Oh, yeah, that familiar stomach drop.
Exactly. Because society tells you this very straightforward story, right? If you get a degree, land a solid job, and work your 40 hours a week, you'll be financially secure.
Right. That's the promise we're all sold.
But statistically, a massive percentage of even six-figure earners are living essentially paycheck to paycheck. I mean, you work every single day, you do everything quote-unquote right, and yet the savings account is just a complete ghost town.
It's a really jarring reality. We aren't just looking at people living below the poverty line here. We're looking at a systemic trap that's ensnaring millions of regular working
Yeah,
professionals.
people who earn good money,
Exactly. People who earn well but are fundamentally stuck on this financial treadmill.
which is the core focus of our deep dive today. We are looking at a really fascinating breakdown from the YouTube channel Prof. Crisp Finance.
Yeah, the video is titled, Why You're Still Broke Despite Working Every Day.
Right. And our mission today is to tear down the structural blueprint of this exact trap. We want to look at why earning more money is usually the exact thing that keeps you trapped and, how to actually engineer an escape.
Because it really does require an engineered escape.
It does. And as I was going through the source material, I just couldn't shake this feeling. It's like managing money without knowing the underlying mechanics is like playing a game of Monopoly.
Right. I
Right.
love a good Monopoly analogy.
But imagine you're playing and you don't realize that inflation is secretly increasing the rent on every single property while your passing Yugo salary stays exactly the same.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The rules of the board are basically shifting beneath you, and the bank just keeps taking your pieces, and you have no idea why.
That shifting board is such a great visual because, the first major structural flaw the source identifies, it isn't about an external force taking your money.
Right, it's internal.
Exactly. It's an internal flaw in how we actually sequence our paychecks. Most people operate on this spend first, save what remains model.
Which makes sense intuitively. You have to pay for your life first.
It makes sense until you look at the mechanism failing behind it, which is
Mhm.
basically Parkinson's law applied to personal finance.
Okay, remind us how Parkinson's law works here.
So Parkinson's law says work expands to fill the time allotted. In finance, your expenses will naturally expand to consume your entire available income.
Ah, right. If the money is just sitting there and checking, it gets spent. Like the friction to spend it is basically zero.
Precisely. If you wait until the end of the month to save after housing, food, entertainment, the inevitable random Amazon purchases,
Guilty as charged.
right, there is mathematically nothing left.
Hmm.
So the alternative framework, which the source notes is pretty much universally practiced by people who actually build wealth, is to reverse that sequence.
They pay themselves first.
Yes, they move the investment or savings capital totally off the table the second it arrives. They are artificially creating scarcity in their checking account.
So you're securing your pieces on the board before the dice even roll.
Exactly. But even if you grasp that concept, the source points out that attempting to execute it without a structured financial plan is basically just financial drift.
Yeah, and the source uses this analogy that managing money without a budget or savings goals is exactly like driving a car without a destination.
Which is a perfect way to put it. I mean, we all know we need a budget.
Right. I think everyone listening knows what a budget is. But the trap isn't ignorance of the tool, is it?
No, not at all. It's failing to recognize that a budget is actually an allocation of intent. Without it, your spending is just dictated by immediate environmental triggers.
Rather than long-term goals.
Exactly. And those environmental triggers are incredibly potent, especially, when we look at how they interact with our income, which introduces the phenomenon of lifestyle creep.
Oh, man. Lifestyle creep. This is the part that really fascinated me in the source material because I feel like it happens to almost everyone.
Oh, it's nearly universal.
Right. You land that promotion, your income spikes by, say, 15%. And human psychology just instantly tries to hijack the steering wheel.
It's so
You
fast.
start thinking, well, I've worked so hard for this. I deserve the apartment with a balcony. I should absolutely upgrade my car. Like, it feels like you're winning.
It feels like winning because you are acquiring the visual markers of wealth, but structurally, you haven't changed your financial reality at all.
The underlying math hasn't shifted one bit.
Right, because wealth isn't defined by the absolute number of your salary. Wealth is solely determined by the gap between what you earn and what you consume.
That gap is everything.
It is. If your income goes up by $10,000 and your lifestyle expands to consume exactly $10,000 of new luxuries, that gap remains at zero.
You're literally just running significantly faster on a much more expensive treadmill.
That's exactly it. And to make matters worse, while you're running on that treadmill, there are usually leaks you don't even see.
Debt, the silent killer.
Yes. The source specifically highlights consumer debt like credit cards and personal loans as the silent killer of that wealth gap. We really have to look at the mechanics of compounding interest here.
Right, which people call the eighth wonder of the world when it's making you money.
Exactly. But when applied to consumer debt, it's working in reverse. And the minimum monthly payments are engineered by lenders to feel incredibly manageable.
Right, they want you to just pay that $50 a month.
They do. They keep you anesthetized to the fact that over a period of years, the interest is just silently siphoning away hundreds of dollars. It's a continuous, invisible drain on your capital.
Which brings up a glaring question for me. If this system is so hostile to the average person, why isn't the defense against it taught?
That's the million-dollar question.
The source makes a really pointed observation here. Our educational system will drill you on, like trigonometry and the periodic table, for years, but they won't spend a single afternoon teaching you how an amortization schedule works.
Or how to build a basic budget. The current educational system simply wasn't designed with personal financial literacy as a core competency.
So you're just thrust into a highly complex, aggressive financial ecosystem at 18 years old with zero formal armor.
Right. So, of course, the default behavior is to fall into these traps.
Okay, let's pivot the lens here a bit. We've established the mechanical traps, right? Spending first, financial drift, lifestyle creep, the math of compounding debt, systemic ignorance.
Yeah, the structural stuff.
But the source makes a very sharp turn here into behavioral economics. Because you can memorize the math all day long, but if your underlying psychological framework regarding money is fractured, you will continually self-sabotage.
This is where the analysis gets deeply compelling. Because the math of personal finance is actually quite simple. It's addition and subtraction.
Right.
But the psychology, that is devastatingly complex. The source argues that to truly escape, we have to examine the invisible barriers, starting with how our brains were wired during childhood.
The concept of childhood scarcity. This was so interesting, how observing our parents actually programs our adult financial baseline.
Yes, because children don't just learn from what they are explicitly told. They absorb the underlying anxiety of their environment.
So if you grew up watching your parents struggle.
Exactly. If money was a constant source of stress, conflict, or profound scarcity in your house, your brain develops a neurochemical association between money and fear.
And then as an adult, you live out that programming completely subconsciously.
Right. Some people will hoard cash, terrified to invest it because they think it might just vanish.
Or they do the exact opposite, right?
Yes, the opposite extreme. They spend every dollar the moment they get it, because their subconscious belief is that scarcity is inevitable, so they might as well get the dopamine hit of a purchase before the money disappears.
It's basically an ingrained survival mechanism that's just totally misfiring in a modern context.
That's a great way to phrase it.
Huh.
And that ties directly into the next psychological barrier the source talks about, using financial tools to solve emotional deficits.
Ah, the classic retail therapy.
Exactly. Emotional spending. You have a brutal day. Your boss is terrible. You're exhausted.
And on the way home, you drop $100 on premium takeout, or you just buy a bunch of clothes online to feel better.
Right. You are effectively purchasing a transient spike in dopamine to medicate your stress. And, I mean, it works in the short term. You feel a momentary high.
But it leaves you with a permanent financial hangover.
Exactly. So to break this, the source insists on a fundamental cognitive reframe regarding the concept of a budget. Because most people hear the word budget and their brain immediately translates it to restriction.
Right, they view it as a financial prison. The immediate thought is total deprivation. I can't do anything fun. I'm just restricting my life so I can pay bills.
The reframe is to recognize that a budget is not a restriction at all. It is the ultimate tool of taking control.
Okay, explain that shift.
Saving capital isn't depriving your current self. It is literally purchasing options for your future self. Financial discipline today is simply the purchase price of autonomy tomorrow.
I really want to push back on that logic a little bit, though, because I see a lot of friction there for the listener.
Oh, absolutely. Let's hear it.
The source warns against the trap of living in the moment. But, I mean, life is unpredictable. There is a deeply valid argument for enjoying the fruits of your labor right now.
Sure.
If I'm just hoarding every penny for a future that isn't even guaranteed, aren't I just sacrificing my present happiness?
Yeah.
How does this framework balance living in the moment without making you feel completely deprived?
It's the most common pushback, and the source addresses it with a crucial distinction. The danger is not in enjoying your money. The danger is when living in the moment becomes a rationalization for completely abandoning your future planning.
So it's not about never having fun.
Not at all. Goal isn't absolute asceticism. It's calculated balance. You want to take that vacation. You want to go to the Michelin star restaurant. Do it.
What?
But the difference between the wealthy mindset and the broke mindset is that the wealthy mindset engineers that expense into their overall financial framework.
Oh, they plan for the thrill.
Exactly. You plan for it rather than impulsively sacrificing your baseline security for it. You ensure you have a life today while guaranteeing you have options tomorrow.
So the budget isn't a tyrant telling you no. It's a map that explicitly gives you permission to say yes to the things you actually value, completely guilt-free.
It completely disarms the anxiety around spending.
That fundamentally changes the emotional weight of it. Okay, let's move from theory into execution.
Yes, do.
We know the math traps. We know the psychological barriers. Now we need the cure. The source outlines a 6-step escape plan. And I want to walk through this because the specific mechanics here are really actionable.
Yeah, they are very practical.
Step 1 is the financial audit, knowing exactly where your money went last month.
Right, because you cannot optimize a system you don't fully perceive. The source advises going through the last 30 days of your statements, literally line by line.
Track every single meal, every impulse purchase.
Everything. What happens here is that you break through cognitive dissonance. Our brains naturally filter out routine, minor expenses.
Right, we remember buying the new television.
But we completely forget the 22 times we spent $8 on coffee and a pastry.
Oh yeah, seeing that $90 on coffee or $60 on totally unused subscriptions really changes things.
When you force yourself to look at the aggregated data, realizing you spent $400 on minor conveniences, the shock alone is often enough to alter your behavior.
It makes the invisible hemorrhage visible. From there, we move to step 2, deploying a framework. And they recommend the 50-30-20 rule.
A classic.
Honestly, anyone who listens to financial content knows the broad strokes of this, right? 50% for absolute needs, 30% for wants, 20% for savings and debt. But the real insight from the source isn't the percentages themselves.
No, it's how we lie to ourselves about the categories.
Yes. Talk about that.
The miscategorization of wants as needs is where the framework usually collapses. People will convince themselves that a luxury gym membership or premium cable is a baseline survival need.
Right. I need my streaming services.
Exactly. But a true need is shelter, basic utilities, and standard groceries. When you rigorously enforce those boundaries, the 50-30-20 rule forces you to acknowledge exactly how much of your capital is actually bleeding into lifestyle choices disguised as necessities.
Which perfectly sets up step 3, the emergency fund. The source dictates saving 3 to 6 months of living expenses held in a completely separate, untouched account.
Untouched is the key word there.
Right. I've always thought of this as a circuit breaker in a house. Like you need it installed before the power surge hits.
A circuit breaker is the exact right analogy. Life has a catastrophic timing mechanism. The transmission on your car will blow or a medical emergency will occur.
It's inevitable.
It is. And if you do not have that liquid cash buffer, the only alternative is to absorb that shock with high-interest credit. That one event can completely reset years of financial progress.
Wow.
Yeah, the emergency fund isn't an investment meant to yield returns. It is an insurance policy against the mathematical destruction of new debt.
Speaking of debt, step 4 is where the source says to kill it aggressively, specifically targeting debts over a 10% interest rate.
Yes, you have to stop the bleeding.
But there's a really fascinating tactical debate here that the source brings up between the avalanche method and the snowball method.
Oh, this is a huge debate in personal finance.
I've always struggled with this personally.
Yeah.
Because mathematically, if my investments yield 8% and my credit card debt is at 20%, I have to kill the debt first. And avalanche says focus everything on the highest interest rate.
Right, that's the math approach.
But snowball says ignore the rates and focus on the smallest balance first. Which one does the source actually recommend? How do they navigate this contradiction between pure math and human behavior?
It's a great question. The source recognizes that personal finance is more about behavior management than pure mathematics.
Good.
So the avalanche method, targeting the highest interest rate first, is mathematically optimal. You will pay less money to the bank over time. However, it fundamentally ignores human neurochemistry. If your highest interest debt is a massive $30,000 student loan, it might take you a year to feel like you've made a dent.
And you just lose motivation
Exactly. The snowball method, conversely, weaponizes dopamine.
by giving you immediate wins.
Right. When you target that small $500 medical bill and wipe it out entirely in a month, your brain receives a massive dopamine spike.
Oh, I see.
That positive feedback loop creates the actual chemical motivation required to tackle the next debt on the list. So the source concludes that either method is valid, but the deciding factor must be your own self-awareness.
As long as it keeps your motivation high and you stick to it.
Exactly. If you are deeply analytical and disciplined, use Avalanche. If you need psychological momentum to prevent burnout, use Snowball. Execution is infinitely more important than theoretical optimization.
Know thy brain. I love that.
It's crucial.
Step 5 brings us back to the core mechanism we opened with,
Ah,
paying yourself first. But here, the source emphasizes the how, which is complete automation.
You have to remove willpower from the equation entirely. Willpower is a depreciating asset. It gets depleted throughout the day by decision fatigue.
So if you rely on willpower to transfer money into savings manually at the end of the month,
You will eventually fail. You must set up automated transfers that trigger the exact moment your paycheck hits your account. Even if it is only $50 a month, the neurological habit of automating your future security matters far more in the beginning than the absolute dollar amount.
the machine does the heavy lifting for you.
Exactly. Let the system do the work.
And that brings us to the final step, step 6, which is a hard truth about the limits of frugality. You must increase your income.
Right, because budgeting alone won't make you rich. Budgeting is a defensive strategy, and there's a hard mathematical floor to how much you can cut your expenses.
Right, you can only negotiate your bills so far. You can only cook so many meals at home.
Exactly, but there's virtually no ceiling to how much you can earn. If you want to accelerate wealth creation, you eventually have to go on offense. You have to acquire high-leverage skills, ask for a raise, or build a side stream to fundamentally widen that gap between earning and spending.
Now, beyond those 6 actionable steps, the source points out a few what they call sneaky drains.
Ah, yes, the quiet killers.
Right, these are the subtle cultural norms that quietly devastate our finances. I mean, we all know about forgotten subscriptions, having 3 to 6 unused ones, the gym you never go to, the streaming service you haven't opened in 6 months.
It's essentially lighting money on fire.
Exactly. But the source zeroes in on something more ingrained, the convenience premium of food delivery and eating out.
Convenience has become one of the most aggressively priced luxuries in modern society. We've totally normalized the idea of having hot meals brought directly to our doors.
It's so easy now, just press a button.
It is. But the return on investment disparity between bulk cooking at home versus utilizing delivery apps is staggering. You aren't just paying for the food, you are paying a massive premium for the time and logistics.
Right.
When reliance on that convenience becomes a default habit rather than an occasional treat, it can easily siphon hundreds of dollars of wealth-building capital every single month.
And the final sneaky drain might be the hardest to combat, because it's tied to our evolutionary desire for tribal belonging, right? Social inflation.
The devastating financial pressure of keeping up with friends socially.
It is incredibly difficult to navigate.
It really is, because if your social circle's default mode of connection involves high-end restaurants, expensive weekend trips, or, acquiring the latest tech, the gravitational pull to match that spending is immense.
People will literally finance a lifestyle with debt, simply to avoid the psychological pain of feeling excluded from their group.
Which is exactly why establishing clear, deeply personal financial goals is mandatory. When your goal is crystal clear, whether it's buying a home or achieving early retirement, it acts as an anchor.
It gives you a reason to say no.
Exactly. It transforms a painful no to a costly dinner into a highly intentional yes to your own future autonomy.
You are actively choosing your future reality over someone else's current evening out.
Beautifully said.
It all circles back to that profound mindset shift. So pulling all these threads together, what is the ultimate signal through the noise here?
Well, the core thesis from Prof. Crisp Finance is that being broke is rarely just a life sentence or just bad luck.
It's a pattern.
It is a highly predictable pattern of structural leaks and psychological missteps. And any pattern, once mapped, can be deliberately interrupted and replaced.
The broke trap thrives in the dark. But the moment you introduce the friction of a budget, the defense of an emergency fund, and the automation of paying yourself first, the trap loses its power over you.
It completely loses its grip.
But, theory without execution is just entertainment. So we're giving you a call to action straight from the source's first step.
Your step one homework.
Exactly. Sometime this week, sit down, pull up your bank statements from the last 30 days, and forensically write down every single outgoing expense.
Don't rationalize them and don't judge yourself.
Just observe the raw data of where your pieces on the board actually went. Simply looking at the unvarnished reality of your behavior is the catalyst for everything we've discussed today.
It really is the first real step in reclaiming agency over your resources.
To close this out, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over or explore on your own. We spent a lot of time analyzing how financial discipline isn't deprivation, but rather the act of buying options for your future self.
Right.
We also looked at how social pressure and convenience constantly tempt us to trade those options away. So think about the very last impulsive purchase you made simply because it was fast or because you wanted to keep pace with a friend.
It's a tough question.
If financial discipline is truly about stockpiling options for your future, what specific future option did that impulsive purchase just cost you? Until next time, make sure you're the one deciding how the game is played.